Welcome, everyone. Come on in. There's lots of seats. No need to stand in the back of the room. Welcome, everybody, to our afternoon programs. So, a couple of quick housekeeping. Our keynote this afternoon with Paul Stanley will immediately follow this ceremony. After the keynote, Agents Live will be in Golden Gate B. That means the ballroom right next to where you picked up your badge. So, one level up, right where you went to registration, Golden Gate B for Agents Live. Award ceremony, of course, this evening at the Masonic. A reminder that shuttles will be leaving from the Mission Street side of the hotel starting at 6 o'clock. Award show starts at 7:30. Doors are at 6:30. Shuttles will start again afterwards at 10 p.m. to come back. And I think that's all. Pollstar's Gary Smith.
Welcome to the honors presentation. When we envisioned this award originally, we thought we wanted to not only recognize an individual that has had an outstanding career for a lifetime achievement, but also someone that was making a difference today. And this year it seems the individuals that we were considering were in some ways joined at the hip. We couldn't honor one without honoring the other. This year's Pollstar Honor Award goes most fittingly to Dan Weiner and Fred Bohlander. So before we bring them up, we'll just give you a little background and then we have a video presentation. 46 years ago, Dan and Fred left the comfort of LA, working at major agencies in Los Angeles, to open their own agency in a house in Carmel, starting Monterey Peninsula Artists. It was a gamble that paid off immensely over the years until they decided to merge with Paradigm in 2004, becoming even bigger and a force in the industry that creating a legacy that will remain unmatched. Interestingly enough, when we first made the announcement of the awards, I want to share this email that was circulated throughout Paradigm by Jonathan Levine. He doesn't know I'm doing this, by the way, but it reads, "Throughout history, great pairings have made all the difference in the world, literally. Where to start? Adam and Eve, Antony and Cleopatra, spaghetti and meatballs, Rodgers and Hammerstein, Lieber and Stoller, peanut butter and jelly, Bert and Ernie, milk and cookies, Lennon and McCartney, Jagger, Richards, Jordan and Pippin, macaroni and cheese, Page and Plant, Hunter Garcia, Tom and Jerry, Koufax, Drysdale, Batman and Robin." So who arguably may be the biggest, the most impactful? The entire reason everyone is receiving this email, Dan and Fred, of course, the greatest duo of all time. So I think when this comes from your team, it says everything. Congratulations to you both, Dan Weiner, Fred Bohlander. There are a few other people that have something to say to you, so we're going to start the video.
Hey, Dan and Fred. So here we are in Chicago, where it all began for you guys all those years ago. The journey started right here in this great city. The journey that allowed the two of you to become the two of you, to start on this epic adventure. Everything that has been Dan and Fred. Two guys who are synonymous with each other. You never hear just Dan or just Fred. It's Dan and Fred.
Danny Weiner, Fred Bohlander. I wish I could be there with you, but unfortunately Danny and Fred have me booked in Indianapolis tonight. But the folks at Pollstar wanted me to offer some sort of personal insight into why the relationship works so well with Danny and Fred and why they've been so successful in all these years. And in fact, I have worked with them for quite a long time, almost 40 years together, so I know some things about them that people don't know. And one of the things I'll let you in on is that secretly, when Danny and Fred are alone together, they scream at each other. They have tantrums and they curse at each other. So maybe that's the key. Anyway, Danny, Fred, congratulations. Have a great evening.
I can't believe I'm making this video, as you failed at 3 of the basic tenets of being an agent. First, you have to learn to scream at promoters. Second, you have to live in LA or New York or Nashville. And third, you have to learn to lie to people, okay? So, regardless of this, and breaking all of the basic rules, I want you to know that you are world-class and our friends here at Another Planet Entertainment.
Fred and Dan, you were there for me in the beginning in 1986 when my first record came out, and you're still here for me today. Thank you for everything you do for the band and me. Congratulations on this well-deserved honor.
Hey, Dan and Fred, congratulations on your Lifetime Achievement Award with Pollstar. But what's even more amazing is your partnership. It's withstood the test of time. And Fred, you didn't even have to convert. It's amazing. I love your partnership. In fact, I refer to it as the Siegfried and Roy of partnerships. Why do I call it Siegfried and Roy? Because it's a magic act. How did you move to Monterey when there's no business whatsoever? Fred, how do you drive around in your Speedo? You're racing around in cars all day. And Dan, you're hiking up a mountain. And yet you guys build this huge company and this amazing reputation. You're well-loved, well-liked, and well-respected. You guys have integrity, and you've done one hell of a job. Congrats. You deserve it.
Dan Weiner, it's Adina here. I love you so much. Everyone should be worshiping you. Congratulations on this wonderful honor.
Hello, Fred. We've worked together for a lifetime. Close to it. And you're just very dear to me. Always done a great job, had my back. It's always great seeing you at gigs and being able to talk to you about how they go and enjoy almost all of them. And you deserve this Lifetime Achievement Award. Congratulations. I'm really happy about it, and enjoy it.
Hello, Dan and Fred. Sorry I couldn't be there. Congratulations on the award. You really deserve it. You're the best, you know that? Cheers.
Hello, Dan and Fred Bohlander. I mean, I haven't seen Fred. I didn't know he was even alive anymore. It's like David Bowie. He disappeared, and then they found out he passed. But I'm sure Fred is still around. So Danny and Fred, or Fred and Dan, here's to a great marriage for you two guys for all these years. And I want to salute you both for being gentlemen. And I want you to have a long, long life. Long, long life. What?
They're getting the Pollstar Award.
Which is absolutely fucking meaningless, okay? But whatever award it is, I'm sure it's going to be made of plastic. And I hope you enjoy it. And I hope to have many years of talking to you guys on the phone. Especially, I'd like to speak to Fred once in my life. I didn't even know he's still with us in this country and the world. But Fred, wherever you are, you're incognito. Love you both.
Hey, Fred and Dan. Steve Jensen here. I happen to be in New York City while you're gracing my hometown with your presence, and I know it's in good hands. You're men of style and substance, so much so that, Fred, you know a beautiful, beautiful car when you see one, and Dan, you know an incredible jelly maker when you see one, and you know what I mean. We've known each other for more than 40 years. We've done a lot of business together, but most of all, we are great friends. Congratulations on this incredibly well-deserved honor. I wish I could be there to celebrate with you. But have a good evening nonetheless. All the best.
Dan and Fred, congratulations on this wonderfully well-deserved honor. I can only say that you are both such beautiful people. It is always such a joy, and I'm so lucky to be able to walk with you. Even when the situation is difficult, as it tends to get in our business, you handle things with a true grace, class, kindness, and I truly appreciate that. I have enjoyed your knowledge, skill, and love for decades, and I love every single moment. Congratulations.
Hi, Fred. Hi, Dan. Congratulations on your Pollstar Lifetime Achievement Award. We've been together for I think it's 46 years. And I can only say thank you. I can't think of I can think of only one job where I was stiffed, and it had nothing to do with the promoter or the club. It was in Fort Lauderdale. It may have been, I've forgotten how that worked. And you stepped in, I got paid. Congratulations again, and most of all, thank you.
Hi, Dan. Hi, Fred. Hard to believe it's been 40 years since you guys decided to pack up and move to Monterey from Los Angeles and open up Monterey Peninsula Artists. It's everybody said it couldn't be done. You did it. You proved everybody wrong. What did they know anyway? I'd say here's to another 40, but at this point, shouldn't we be on a beach somewhere like Hawaii or the Caribbean? Maybe not. Anyway, congrats on your Lifetime Achievement Award. Well deserved.
Congratulations, Hey, when I opened up my program and saw the two of you, two of my favorites, but hey guys, remember one thing, I got seniority on you.
Ladies and gentlemen, CEO AEG Rocky Mountain and Northwest Region, Chuck Morris.
This is really an honor. I started my first club in 1970 to 71 in Boulder, Colorado, called Tulagi's, and struggled the first 8 months trying to get bands. We got a few bands from some small agencies. And one day a little band from Omaha, Nebraska came in and played as the opening act. They were called Bumpy Action. And they told me they saw a guitar player in Minneapolis named Leo Kottke, and he was the greatest guitarist they had ever seen. I went across the street to the Record Center on the hill in Boulder and bought 2 of his albums. He was a relatively unknown and fell in love with Leo. Took the album down to KRNW Radio. In those days, it was freeform radio. That became KBCO, by the way, years later. And they started playing it like crazy, and the record started selling like crazy. And I looked up in a book, and it said, Agent Fred Bohlander. So I called Fred Bohlander, and he was at a big agency, IFA. And I didn't think he'd take my phone call, and he did. And I said, I want to book Leo Kottke for 4 shows. That's 500 people a show. That was 2,000 tickets. And he said, are you sure? You know, he's hardly toured, and he hasn't played Colorado before, and I don't know if he could sell them. I said, it's the #1 record in Boulder and the #1 record on a radio station, and he will sell. And Leo and Fred sold me the act, and he came in and sold out 4 shows. 5 months later, there was a little band called the Doobie Brothers. And their first album, people don't realize, did not do that well. But their second album had just come out, Toulouse Street, and had a song on it called Listen to the Music. And I heard that record and said, this is going to be a big record. And I looked up in the book, and there he was, Fred Bohlander's name under the Doobie Brothers. So I called Fred. Took my call this time, which he always has and still does, and booked the Doobie Brothers for 5 nights for $2,500 versus 50% of the door. And that was 10 shows because people played 2 shows a night. And Fred showed, are you sure they can do that many people? We're talking 5,000 tickets in Boulder, Colorado. And I said, absolutely. Well, they came in and sold out every show and made $10,000 in percentage. And I'll never forget, Bruce Cohen, their manager, said, this is the biggest payday we ever had, and Fred said the same thing. Funny thing about the shows at Tulagi's, I had a great lighting man named Marty Wolf, who they stole and became lighting guy for the Doobies for 20 years. I also had a bartender named Bobby LeKind, who started playing congas with the band on stage, and they stole him, and he became a conga player for the Doobie Brothers, but I still loved it anyway. But what can I say about Fred Bohlander that you probably don't all know? I knew he was both him and Dan were my kind of guys when I made my first trip to LA to meet agents, and I went to IFA and met Fred and Dan, and they said, let's go to a nice place for lunch. And I'm a guy from Brooklyn who went to Boulder to go to school. You know, to me, you know, a nice place is not that nice. And I figured we'd go to, you know, Dantano's, or the Palm wasn't open yet, but one of the steak places. But we went downstairs to Hamburger Hamlet. If you remember, if any old timers here, you remember that restaurant, the basement of the IFA. And I knew they were my type of guys, and we became best friends ever since. But after that, I booked all of Fred and Dan's acts, from Jesse Colin Young to Emmylou Harris to Michael Murphy to the Ozark Mountain Daredevils to Lyle Lovett, who I managed and gave to Fred when he first came out, to the Dirt Band, to Jesse Colin Young, a whole bunch of them. There's also bands you never heard of that we had, like Hartsfield and Mason Prophet. By the way, the thing I loved about Fred was even the bands that didn't make it were great bands. He had immaculate taste in music. And if he sold me an act, whether they made it big or not, I knew they were going to be a great band. And the greatest thing about Fred, that I've always been so proud to be a friend, was he treated everybody the same. He was always calm and caring and deliberate, and always spent as much time on Leo Kottke, who I've managed now for 3.5 decades, as he does for bands that make more money than Leo on one night that Leo makes in a year. But he's still there on the phone booking dates for Leo Kottke. And that's Fred Bohlander. And that's really unusual in today's world. I only had 2 fights with Fred in 46 years. Now, I grew up sitting next to Barry Fay, who I had 19 fights a week with. And Irving is probably my second oldest friend in the business, and I've had 4,000 fights with him. But with Fred, it's really interesting. Fred is much scarier when he gets mad. It's really funny, because he's only been mad at me, I think, twice in 46 years we had a fight. And he's so calm, and it scared me to death when he got mad at me. He's just the same Fred, but it's really scary when he's not happy. But anyway, I love Fred. He's more than just an agent. He's my friend. He's been at 2 of my marriages, so you know we're very close. Anyway, it's my pleasure to give him the Lifetime Achievement Award from Pollstar magazine. This is my honor to be even involved in such a great man and such a great career. Fred?
Well, first off, the video presentation, that was fantastic. I mean, the things that these guys had to say made the day so far. But one of the things I want to say is that on my way over here, I was recalling the very first Pollstar award show that I attended at Radio City Music Hall, of which there were probably less than 100 people there. And it made us feel like really quite small in this vast venue that the Radio City Music Hall is. And it's just really great to see that all these years later, it's amazing the growth that the concert industry has come to when you see what Pollstar has been able to accomplish with this conference that they've had year in and year out, and the amount of people that it has drawn. A Lifetime Achievement Award is a great honor, and I have the pleasure to share this honor with Dan Weiner, who is my best friend and partner for 45 years. We would not be here today if it hadn't been for all the support we received throughout the years from our wives, Ramona, Ellen, all of our associates, agents, staff at Paradigm, at MPA, and all the artist managers and clients, past and present. Without them, it just wouldn't have happened. I am proud and humbled to be part of the concert industry and have watched it grow from the minor to the major leagues. And I can truly say it is one of the best opportunities that young people can have if they really strive for perfection. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, longtime manager and self-professed music wino, Bruce Cohen.
Thank you very much. Well, as Chuck said, the first Doobie Brothers record didn't do very well. It was about 8,000 copies, and when we got off tour, it was in the recycle bin at Tower Records by the time we ended the tour. So in '71, we got ready to put out our second album, Toulouse Street, and I needed a booking agent badly because I was booking Keystone Corner and all the local clubs in the Bay Area for the band, and it was time to really step it up. We had an airplay on a song called Listen to the Music in spring of 1972, and I was calling agents, and I was introduced to Tom Ross at ABC Booking, and then Phil Casey at ATI. Jerry Heller drove me up the canyon in LA to his house, and there's the first guy I could see that could snort blow while he was driving in Laurel Canyon with no hands on the wheel. And we got up to his house, and he had all these stuffed animals, like zebras and giraffes in his house. And I thought, this is an interesting booking agent. And so Dan Weiner was the only guy that wouldn't call me back when I call him, and finally, Listen to the Music started to get play, and Danny was on the phone, and I invited him to come down to Phoenix for a show. Phil Casey, to show me his, besides sending a limo to the airport to pick me up, which I'd never been in a limo before, but he sent a limo, and he gave me 3 shows with Three Dog Night for $300 for 20-minute set, back to back, Seattle, Salt Lake City, and Phoenix. And they were, those guys were in a Learjet, obviously. They had about 10 #1 hits, and we were in the equipment truck with the band driving from Seattle to Salt Lake to Phoenix. Well, all the agents came down and saw the show in Phoenix, and they did 20-minute set. They got a standing encore in 20 minutes, and all the agents started, come on, let's go out and have some dinner, after the show. So here's all these agents sitting around the table vying for the band now, and they're all going, oh, you screwed up this tour, and you really ruined that band's career, and they're cutting each other apart. And Danny's just sitting there. He says, come and see me in LA, we'll talk. So I went to visit Dan, international famous agency, and I went to his house to meet his wife, Ellen, and I walked up the sidewalk to his home, and when I knocked on the door, his 1-year-old son crawled to the door, and he opened the door, and his son was barking like a dog. And I knew that was the guy for me at that point. This family is just my kind of people, and that was 44 years ago, maybe. We booked thousands of shows with the Doobie Brothers. They had their biggest year ever this last year in their whole career. And I have to say, Danny was best man at all 3 of my weddings. That's how close we are. And this award is well deserved for Dan to be best man at all 3 of my weddings. So thank you, Dan, for everything. You deserve it.
Thank you, everybody. It is an honor, and I want to say that it's a special honor to be the honorees after Barbara Hubbard. So that's that. Gary really stole my material because I was going to start by reading the beginning of Jonathan's email about Adam and Eve and so on and so forth. And I was going to go on, and I am going to go on, to tell you about Spaghetti, Fred Bohlander. I want to tell you how I met Fred and you know how it's been since then. So Fred and I worked at International Famous Agency. Fred was in Chicago. I was in Los Angeles. We knew each other on the phone, not really much in person, never in person. And there was an agents meeting, all agents meeting in New York. And I came into New York. And the agency at that time, I don't really remember all the people there, but it was a motley crew. I can tell you that. And Fred came into the room, whatever room it was, and all of a sudden, here was the best dressed man. I mean, it was exactly what you see today. He had the biggest smile on his face, and he had a beautiful jacket on. I remember he had saddle shoes. And I was probably dressed maybe as good as this, not, you know, no better. And so Fred and I were in touch, and then IFA decided to move Fred to Los Angeles. And I don't know, I really don't know how this happened, but it was unconsciously, Ellen and I and Fred decided and became instant friends and partners. And I don't know, we certainly didn't pick him up at the border, you know, going into Los Angeles. But I do remember that we were immediately together once he moved there. And that, you know, when he got his first house, we were there. We were friends. We were in it together. And we worked in Los Angeles for a few years. We were at IFA. We had good clients. There were a couple of situations where people, you know, Howard Kaufman suggested, why don't you guys go out on your own? And Fred and I thought about it. And then we decided, no, we weren't going to do it. And then another year went by, and it came up. And there's a theme for me with Fred, which is that sort of now is the time. And the second time he brought it up, we said we're going to go. And we decided that we would move to either Santa Barbara, Marin County, or Monterey. And the decision, I mean, these are big business decisions, right? And the decision was made because Fred had his sister and family in Monterey, and Ellen and I had our dear friend Paul Goldman in Monterey. And that's the business decision. So that's how we got up there. So let's see. So when we actually, before we could move up, Fred had to come up to Monterey. Fred found our first office, which was actually an office before the house. And Fred was sent up on this dangerous assignment because he looked like the most normal of the two of us. And so that was where we first spent our first year. And we had this tiny little house, and the landlord decided to raise the rent by $25. And so we were really indignant. And one day Fred came into the office and said, showed with an advertisement, real estate ad, and said, you got to see this house. I had no interest. And we got in the car, went with the realtor down the coast, and saw the house that was supposed to be the office that Ellen and I and our family lived in, and you know, was our office for years, for 37 years. And I came down the driveway and said, I got to live here. So Fred's responsible for that as well. You know, there were always these moments of sort of, for me, of now is the time moments, and we were very happy with our, you know, small office, small group, successful, everything was fine, and we kept getting these nagging calls from this young agent in Minneapolis named Chip Hooper, and you know, who wanted to work in Monterey, and you know, it was this decision: what are we going to do? Are we going to do it or not do it? And literally, again, it was one of those, now it's Fred saying, now it's the time. This is great. We should do it. And so that's how Chip came into our life. And he's still in our life. Things, as you all know, went very well. And we had been independent for 30 years. And one day I was in Los Angeles, and Fred called, and he said, you're not going to believe it. There's someone who wants to acquire the agency. I said, who? He said, Sam Goris. I said, who's that? And we met with Sam shortly after, and we felt, truly instantly in love. And that's now an 11-year friendship, business relationship, and dear friendship. And, I have to, just in closing, I think that the funny thing is that of all of these things that have happened, I think the thing that's most amazing to me is, and other people have said it today, is that we don't have last names. It's Dan and Fred, Fred and Dan, Danny and Freddie, or Meatball and Spaghetti. So thank you very much. We appreciate this honor. Thanks.